What was the point of JJK Modulo? No, seriously, what was the point? And I'm not talking about the plot. I mean, why did Shueisha drag Gege out of Cancun for this project? Did the magazine need the IP on the short term that bad, or is this some sort of bridge to something more? If you didn't like the chapter, I completely understand. Me personally, I found it absolutely hilarious. And I mean that unironically. A manga has not brought me this much laughter since Gintama. Don't get it twisted, I am vaguely irritated. Not by Gege, not by Modulo, nothing to do with JJK in particular. Not even the usual suspects in the JJK community. I am irritated by creators and intellectuals in the JJK space. Telling us if we're disappointed is because we cannot read. Yes, as a community, we are cursed by the reading comprehension devil. But how we feel about the art has nothing to do with reading comprehension. Of all things we can exchange ideas about or discuss, we cannot argue how we feel about things. One cannot control that any more than the act of falling in love. Best we can do is understand why we feel the way we do after the fact. Either we like it or we don't, that's it. That's a personal boundary we have to respect, first off. Otherwise, what are we doing? Secondly, whether we agree or not, whether right or wrong, where do you sanctimonious virtue signaling pompous pricks get off telling me how I should feel? Back the fuck up, bro. Needless to say, I'm not about to tell anyone how they should feel about it. I am more interested in talking about the short list of things objectively wrong with Modulo. And why you're not crazy for being disappointed if you are. Here's what's got me chopped, right? Everybody has an opinion, but very few actually stand on their opinion. Same people talking about, no, you don't understand, this is a story about harmony and coexistence, are the same people pushing this unnecessarily divisive rhetoric within our community. Bro, you and me are cool with it, sure, but people are pissed, as they should be. Just let them blow off some steam for fuck's sake and not make it a JJK community thing. Same people with the words empathy, Yuji, harmony, and coexistence in their mouth, by the way. You cannot make this shit up, bro. See, what y'all don't understand is when you look crazy, I look crazy, the whole community looks crazy. What outsiders see when they look at us is not a bunch of toxic seeds surrounding the one good seed that is you. Fuck out of here, bro. You're trying to validate your own understanding whilst invalidating someone else's. That's not wisdom, that's friendly fire, bro. You're nerfing your own team and adding it to your kill count. You are not helping, and monologues of your own enlightenments are not welcome right now, gang. Now to your meal. So Modulo's weird series of events finally makes sense. Now I'm gonna try my best to make wine out of these sour grapes. The first page picks up where we left off and option 1 is no longer viable. We finally have the full picture on how Tengen's barriers optimize curse energy. In humans, it is unique to those of Japanese descent, regardless of where they are in the world at present. Save for a few exceptions like Miguel. Tengen's barriers collect the energy that doesn't dissipate from all over the planet and redirect it to Tokyo. There is some traces of cursed energy that cannot be carried over from other parts of the world. That too can collect and take shape in the form of a cursed spirit outside of Japan. Problem is, ever since knowledge of cursed spirits went public, there's been an influx of cursed energy from people overseas flowing into Tokyo too. So even if Maru eliminates cursed energy from Japanese people, cursed spirits will still spawn in Tokyo and would be right back to square one. The reason Maru's technique brought all the keys to harmony together in the curse realm of all places is because from here Maru can influence humanity as a whole, something he wouldn't be able to achieve via Tengen's barriers. The ideal scenario for Yuji is if they can change the shape of the soul to eliminate cursed energy. This wouldn't be a problem for Maru under normal circumstances, but his curse technique is currently in use for the ritual of harmony. A binding vow prevents him from doing anything Fates may deem harmful to humans or the Cimmerians. Removing the metabolism of cursed energy counts as bodily harm. So Maru cooks up an alternate route, but first we must talk souls. The cause for the soul resonance between cursed spirits and Romelians is their souls share the same color as Kalyan. I'm not sure if I would call this a new concept more than it was hard confirmation for what we already deduced. since changing the color of the soul isn't on the cards for the living. The plan is to remodel the curse realm into a soul optimization device where color, shape, and subsequent curse energy will be adjusted. Basically, humanity's evolution will begin with the dead in their next phase in the cycle of reincarnation. This applies to all souls on Earth. Cursed spirits are no exception. When souls pass through here, they will be altered to phase out cursed energy in the color of Kalyan. Speaking of Kalyan, this method will come at the expense of Yuji's interstellar co-worker. They may have to euthanize all 50-some-odd Kalyan aboard the Nonax, since they won't recognize the next Romillion generations as one of their own. There's potential Kalyan start eating the tribe's descendants too. The threat to future curse spirits will be nothing compared to Kalyan. This is where things got weird because in the next page, Maru's technique summoned Karaba, alongside a person of interest from my side of the yard in Africa. Maru interrupted Karaba's duel for a second time. He was pulled into the curse realm shortly before we actually see him, as he and Maru have seemingly exchanged some words regarding Yuka and Tsurugi off-screen. Oh, we'll get into that shortly after we're on the same page with this chapter analysis. Maru apologizes as this was the second time he interrupts Karaba's duel. But Karaba is completely understanding of the situation and I would argue is emotionally invested in Yuka's bill of health. I love how expressive and telling Iwasaki's portrayal of the otherworldly king is in this chapter. Karaba is covered in dirt, grime, and his own blood from fighting for his life. At the same time, his eyes have light in them for the first time since we first saw him. Yuka Okkotsu has taught Dabura Karaba about love and the passion for life. If there's only one person in the universe Karaba wants to speak to the most right now, it is Yuka. There's also a somber air about him as it didn't want to leave in that moment. There is an element of sacrifice to be appreciated on Karaba's part. He threw the fight, essentially. Man, our generational modular prediction run has finally come to an end. We are not getting Tsurugi versus Karaba, gang. Stock market crashed overnight when Tsurugi sold, and I'd advise my shareholders to bet the mortgage on Tsurugi stocks. Unprovoked, mind you. 3 of my guys are homeless beside me as a result, and I sincerely apologize. Speaking of, why are y'all not cooking me in the comments? I expected to be called everything but a child of God this week, followed by a mass exodus, but somehow I'm only gaining shareholders. Are y'all so flabbergasted with chapter 23 that you forgot my finest aged milk? Not to look this gift horse in the mouth, but bro, what is going on? I've seen y'all stone people for less on these internet streets. Anyway, man, Maru then sends Karaba and his sister back home to Cimmeria. I don't think he crafted a piece of Nonak to send them away. Maru seems to have a better understanding of his technique and its range that spans light years away. He seems confident he can either find Karaba or summon him once more later. For the sake of time, we'll get into it in a separate video. Speaking of, in maintaining the sanctity of our table, hit the hype button, hit the like button. Maru then uses Idle-Transfiguration to heal the 4 that have been incapacitated during this conflict. So we're just gonna ignore Oski, huh? Damn! Oski Nation, we are deeper in shambles right now. It really be one of your own. Remember the piece of Mahito's soul Maru subjugated and turned into orbs. These appear to be the same orbs, so I'm inclined to believe this isn't some convenient RCT awakening, but Idle-Transfiguration instead. Mahito is basically Maru's Shikigami right now. I wonder if he gets to keep Mahito in perpetuity or if the subjugation will be nullified when the ritual is complete. Either way, if you predicted Mahito will heal Yuka, there's your receipt. Maru then gives thanks to Yuji as they temporarily part ways to attain to the next phase of each of their roles. Maru elects to take on the burden of sin on his own. Yuji then fucks off into the sunsets to do what I can only imagine will also piss me off. Woo! Boy, let me not get ahead of myself. I'm getting tight way too early into this. We then see Maru hover over Tokyo's sky. At this point, he had restructured the curse realm according to the specifications we discussed earlier. The souls of all present curse spirits are then sent to the curse realm to be remodeled. Quick sidebar. It's time to have conversations about the laws of curse energy and fate as it relates to JJK's universe. Recent events suggest the cycle of reincarnation extends beyond Earth. Let me know if you're interested in an exploration of if any of our Saimurian cast are reincarnation of characters from the OG JJK. Anyway man, as Maru is resolved to shoulder what he is doing on his own, the souls of his brother and friends show up to carry the burden of sin alongside him. Satoru's dream is preserved as the weight of the world has been taken off one person's shoulders once more. No thanks to Yuji, by the way. Y'all better not give it doesn't matter any points for this. Yuka would have died today and curses would still be here tomorrow if Yuji had his way. Y'all let our boy slide on a lot. Satoru would have had 1,000 videos titled given everything, unable to do anything, but it also doesn't matter on his head top by now. We gon' make sure the right hit piece goes to the right man over here. Chapter ends with Maru sending off cursed spirits by the masses into the new world. I opened this video with the question, what was the point of Modulo? The answer to that question when it wraps up will significantly impact how I view Modulo as a whole. The things I'm about to list are geese that are already cooked. I will refrain from making statements in stone for events that are subject to change in the final chapters. If there's anything it seems I have overlooked, assume it's one of those. I'll extend the benefit of the doubt to our boy Gege. Now for the first thing objectively wrong with Modulo, the catfish. We have been deceived, hoodwinked, bamboozled. By definition, disappointment is when expectations go unfulfilled. In this life, we are not entitled to anything. As such, Gege is not responsible for our personal expectations. Unless Gege intentionally set those expectations, which in this case, he did. I can't defend my mans on this one, not gonna lie. In order to write Yuji out of his fight with Karaba in the first place, Gege had to write it into the story first, as it was the most logical progression of events. When Karaba began scaring the hoes, Gege repeatedly used Yuji as the counterbalance. Whenever Karaba did something crazy, would get Yuji mentions shortly afterwards. The most egregious example of this is in chapter 13, when Karaba's demonics were followed by statements of Yuji being somewhat a transcendent being. Hindsight is 2020. Looking back, this was the first time Karaba used his technique on screen. Same chapter, Karaba's killing intent was introduced, concluded with mention of Yuji the Undying. When we saw Karaba, Gege wanted us to think of Yuji. Now, with that said, at this point Gege had built up Yuji to be a sorcerer at the level of Satoru Gojo. Karaba had been built up as a Sukuna level threat. Mind you, this was all completely unprovoked. We welcomed Karaba personally and promised him a cure for his loneliness. Since reading comprehension is the in thing nowadays, I gotta ask. Since Gege built Karaba up as a Sukuna level threat, in what world was Mahoraga the correct answer to his satisfaction? We promised everyone and their mother a glimpse of the culling game and this wasn't it. And if we're gonna get rid of cursed energy anyway, why do the kids need to remember the fear of special grades? Let's not gaslight anybody over this. Gege knew exactly what he was doing. But in his defense, Gege didn't set up Yuji to fight Karaba in the first place. Yuji was more like the elephant in the background that needed to be addressed. Though I shot 30% from the field with my Tsurugi versus Karaba hypothesis, it was legitimate plot points Gege laid out that led me to that conclusion. Though my prediction was Tsurugi would defeat Karaba, what I meant was Karaba would throw the fight. How I saw it play out was Karaba learns Tsurugi stands beside Dora as a warrior. Tsurugi was placed in Karaba's shoes and he made a different choice. Tsurugi chose to die alongside his sister if it meant taking the life of his best friend. Something I'm sure still haunts Karaba to this day. My reasoning was Karaba wouldn't have it in him to cut Dora down for a second time. Like Tsurugi, he wouldn't want to win this way and would throw the fight to complete his arc as a warrior. So it's completely my bad for misinterpreting what Gege was cooking. Ironically, this vindicates Gege in a way because we cannot say the signs were not there and nobody saw it coming. This scene did end up foreshadowing Karaba throwing the fight. It just wasn't delivered in the way we expected. Yuji was never meant to play a part of Karaba's character arc. The longer Modulo ran, the less sense of fight between those two made. Karaba would have to be out of his mind like Maru when his third eye took control for the fight to make sense. Me personally, I don't mind it all that much. But that's only because I made peace with the strongest sorcerer of all time being a depressed, deadbeat, degenerate gambler. From what I've seen, the Catfish has got a lot of people upset. If that's you, man, I completely understand. Next on the list is Offscreening the feature fights of JJK Modulo. I look at it like this. If Modulo will get a sequel, I don't think it's a big deal. If this is JJK's swan song, then Mahoraga may be the most egregious plot device in Modulo. This stands out when you take into account Mahito's impact on the main card of Modulo. Both Mahito and Mahoraga had nothing to lose in their battles, not even their lives. Mahito could not be killed in the Curse Realm. Mahoraga could not be dispatched due to plot armor. Yuka's suspended animation was always going to keep him alive until a third party intervenes. I won't even beat around the bush. Gege employed 2 bullet sponges without agency to showcase Yuji and Karaba's abilities, while shielding the flesh of our main cast from paying the price of harmony. It's more armor to go around in this plot than in half of Westeros. Again, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation if we hadn't said all that. But even then, I cannot defend the usage of Mahoraga in Modulo. Chaos and order didn't number on the stakes enough as it is already. Aside from Mahito, Mahoraga is the only one to take on all the damage this conflict had to give. Yuka was never in any danger because Mahoraga took the brunt of Karaba. On a writing perspective, Mahoraga's abilities were perfect to showcase Karaba's full kit. All's good if it ends there. But of course it did not. This is cheap for multiple reasons. Yuji vs Karaba is the duel that naturally should have happened, but Gege went out of his way to write it out of the story. By the end of Modulo, both their destructive outputs will have been focused on the one character whom not only can take it, but can also die with no consequences to Jujutsu Kaisen's future. Like Mahito being used to showcase Yuji's kit, Mahoraga was nothing more than a nigh indestructible doll, distracting us from the fact that nobody's in any danger and there's no real stakes. Mari vs Tsurugi got clowned on a lot, but it may be the only clash of any real consequences at the end of the day. Of all the things on this list, this is one of the 2 that has got me chopped. Wait, hold up. I just realized the direction I'll be taking this discussion in just a few minutes. Given Modulo's themes and what's going on in Iran right now, there's a very thin line between wanting a better execution of the ending's peaceful resolution and wanting to indulge in more violence for my own entertainment. I'm African. I don't want to wake up to my roof gone, nuclear fallout, and radiation poisoning spanning our entire continent. Chances of that happening are not zero nowadays. My issue is not with harmony, it's with the execution. I have a feeling Mahoraga will make more appearances on this list as the prolific force he is. Now on to number 3. The tragedy of Dabura Karaba. Do you ever look at or listen to something and you know the feeling it's supposed to get out of you, but you just don't feel it? That's Karaba's conclusion for me. It rang hollow. No, that's not the right way to put it. I definitely felt something. Delivery fell flat at first, but after a few rereads, I can grow to accept it. And this is coming from a guy who expected the Okkotsu siblings to teach him about love as they have. After doing some introspection in hopes of articulating the problems I have with this, on a week's notice, I can only break it down to 2 points. First is, it doesn't feel earned for our main characters. It'll be crazy to say Yuka didn't do anything, but she did not have agency in this fight. She didn't even grow from this. Mahoraga peeled the layers of Karaba's character back, acting as a mirror for both Karaba's light as well as sense of self. If that's all it took to cure Karaba's loneliness, then was he really that lonely? If a good fight is all he needed, then maybe it wasn't loneliness and Discute sorcerers are just buns. I think this is the problem with the writing choice. Comparing Karaba to Gojo and Sukuna. What made those 2 especially tragic is the solitude that comes with strength. A trait Gege has explicitly demonstrated Karaba carries. In JJK, there have been 7 characters that categorically fall under the strongest. Sukuna, Satoru, Kashimo, Toji, Yuji, Yuta, and Karaba. Of these 7, only Yuta and Yuji did not enjoy battle for the most part. They don't indulge their strength in hedonism like the other 5. Karaba's a good dude, but he's very much in it for the love of the game. That's where I feel this works against his conclusion. If a fight with Mahoraga was all it took to cure this pervasive loneliness, then Satoru and Sukuna wouldn't have needed each other. Toji would have satisfied Satoru when he was a teen. Pause. and Mahoraga would have cleared Sukuna's skies in Shibuya. Hell, Kashimo wouldn't have had to traverse hundreds of years to face Sukuna if Ryu could have gotten his rocks off from just across the country. Point is, either Karaba isn't as strong as we're led to believe, or he wasn't as lonely as we're led to believe. Needless to say, I don't think either of those things are correct, and this was just a rare Gege slip. Mahoraga delivering "Stand proud, you are strong" to Karaba was not on my bingo card. I'll give him that. Hate to bring Kashimo into this, but they are so similar down to their handling. Who watching this right now deadass believes Kashimo did not achieve domain expansion? Mind you, of the 7 strongest I listed earlier, Kashimo has the most screws loose, and a sense of self second to none of his colleagues. The thing with Kashimo is, it's not a matter of whether or not he had a domain. Thing is, even if he had a domain, there would never be a scenario in the story where he'd want to use it. Humor me for a moment and let's assume Kashimo had a domain expansion. He wouldn't use it on anyone except Sukuna, since he cannot perform it without triggering his one-time use technique. When he does get to face Sukuna, however, he'd be incentivized not to use it, because curse technique burnouts might end him before he gets answers from Sukuna. Kashimo did not come all this way for another win or another life. Wanted to know if his loneliness could have been avoided or if he was doomed from the start. Sukuna is the man who'd been in his shoes for the longest time. Kashimo basically wanted to validate his experience. I bring this to you to say that absence of proof is not proof of absence. I believe Kashimo achieved the pinnacle of Jujutsu. Just the idea of having gone his whole life without using his technique once, even accidentally, is absurd. The one-time use binding vow business strongly suggests this is something that was implemented later in Kashimo's life. Gege wrote Kashimo's domain out of the story because it'll make the fight with Sukuna too competitive and take too long. It would be hard to take Kashimo seriously as the strongest if he couldn't perform barrier techniques or RCT at least. Even Naoya has RCT, bro. This went completely over my head until it was animated, but Naoya tries to heal himself and Chozo poisoned him. Just like Uraume, he couldn't heal poison, so he failed. I refuse to accept those two got closer to the core of cursed energy than Kashimo did. Anyway, I'm getting the same impression from this Karaba business. It feels like Gege wrote Yuji out of Karaba's character arc because any skirmish between those two would take 7 chapters minimum. And you know how Gege felt about his 3 volumes. He told Shueisha from the jump, "That's all y'all gonna get out of me, gang." Karaba's conclusion felt completely out of place, out of left field. A polar bear in Arlington, Texas amid everything else that went on in the chapter. Just like his dad, we just got blue balls with Karaba. Pause. This has invoked a hilarious crash out from my boy Zlatan in the comments. Bro, he called Yuji a Tengen Epstein supporter. Y'all the gift that keeps on giving, man. I am thoroughly entertained. Which brings us to number 1 on our list. Harmony makes it matter all of a sudden. The most egregious use of chaos and harmony, in my opinion, was as a plot device to bring Yuji from "no I won't intervene" to "no I'll take care of this." I'm gonna need a better reason than harmony for this complete 180. I've been frustrated with some of Yuji's actions or lack thereof lately, so please do not get me wrong, I am thoroughly entertained. I've enjoyed the deconstruction and slow corruption of Yuji, Itadori, and Wait, enjoyed is crazy. I don't enjoy Yuji's suffering. You know what I mean. Bro, is there any appropriate way to say you enjoyed a tragic story? Like, how do you respond if someone were to ask you what you think of the Shibuya incident? And not sound like we need to lock you up under the jail. My point is, Yuji's character writing is peak and I cannot wait to see what he does next. So my criticisms towards Yuji are in no way a criticism of the writing or a reflection of it. More like a celebration of it. That is, all except one. Yuji going out of his way to fight Mahito was inconsistent with his reason for not intervening with Yuka's duel. Being generous, I'll assume Yuji's rationale is to foster the new generation to solve these kinds of problems on their own. Just like he plans to make preparations for anti-curse measures down the stretch. He's been preparing Jujutsu Society for a world without Yuji Itadori. Letting Yuka and Tsurugi handle the aliens were a part of that. But Yuji's consideration also extended to Maru and Karaba. They are all just 4 brats to Yuji at the end of the day. I found it strange Yuji didn't let Maru subjugate Mahito when he volunteered. There was absolutely no reason for this rematch. Was it because Mahito is dangerous? If that was the case, Karaba is also dangerous, so why didn't he step in to save Yuka? Was it because Maru is too valuable to risk facing Mahito? If that's the case, are we gonna make the lies of Yuji's karma as vague by asking if Yuka's life wasn't just as valuable? Or was it because Yuji made a promise to Mahito that it's on site till the end of time? The problem with that is, didn't Yuji say he does not care about being Yuji Itadori anymore? Like us, Yuji is human and we have contradictions, so this could easily be S-tier writing. But I'ma need this contradiction explained and a better answer than Harmony. I just think it's cheap. That is, unless Gege can fit enough character development and flashbacks in the final chapters to justify this complete 180. Yuji will have let Mahoraga face Karaba for the development of the next generation. Yuji also went on to face Mahito to help with Maru's ritual of harmony. Sounds to me like Yuji's reservations that prevented him from taking action were written out conveniently, shortly after Karaba was written out of the story. How do you sell a trailer for the price of a full feature-length film? This is exactly how you do it. You close the show teasing a new generation battle of the strongest, and hope we don't notice that 2 bullet sponges took on the main antagonist, as well as the main protagonist, so they can pop off with no casualties. The character who will have shouldered the brunt of violence from both sides is the nigh indestructible doll with nothing to lose. It is genius, really. Throw in a few casualties at the end, a giant Kalyan we've never met before today, and a Disgunte chieftain we've only seen in like 2 pages. Yuji's reason for intervening being written in on the same chapter. Karaba's reason for continuing was written out of the story did not sit right with me. The reason being harmony, by the way, because of course it is. Don't get me started on Mari's technique. Whatever it is, that shit is not harmony. It's too early to say if this is an overarching function of their technique, but prayer seems to be key. Maru prayed to find his neighbors across the stars, and their technique crafted Nonax and delivered them to Earth. He prayed to communicate with humans, and his technique ran an AI translator on every Romalian on Earth. He prayed for answers to harmony between humans and Cimmerians, and his technique drew up the play. This whole ritual of harmony ended with a prayer in unison from Maru and Cross. Maru also implies that his prayer can reach Dabura remotely across the stars and will bring them back together one day. It's too early to say if this is an incomplete name type situation, but there's more to the technique than chaos in order. The twins are as close to Yuhavach as it gets in this world of curses. It's almost as if they can touch fate itself. Gege was on PCP or something when he thought up chaos and order, and I'm all for it. My problem is just the execution. The crazy thing about what Maru is able to do right now is he could have done this all along. He did not hit a black flash or experience a traditional awakening. There is nothing to explain how Africa had the black robe all of a sudden. Didn't it take like years, even decades, just to produce a few inches? And how did Maru find it when African government officials failed to produce it with the fate of the planet on the balance? If I didn't know what a Deus Ex Machina is, I would be staring real intently at that black robe right now. Wait, excuse me, we were presented with an explanation of how Maru became Face Boy all of a sudden. See, what happened was he consulted his curse technique. I'll just leave it at that, man. If you hadn't already, hit the hype button, hit the like button. Catch me on the next one, gang.